Hello and welcome to another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Jamie Johnson, legal and government correspondent and an attorney with the Lohman Abdo law firm here in Hudson, Wisconsin. I'm mentioning my day job because today we are interviewing lawyers and candidates for the district attorney. And with me today is Republican candidate and Deputy District Attorney Mike Nieskes. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, as we did with the other candidates, I want to start a little bit with personal background, and then we'll get into the explanation of your current position as Deputy DA for St. Croix County. But tell me a little bit, where did you grow up? Where's your family from, and so forth?
I grew up in Milwaukee, went to grade school, elementary school, high school there. I graduated from the University of Wisconsin, UWM, in 1978. And then I went to DePaul Law School. My wife is Barbara. We've been married 32 years now, and met her in Southern Illinois, where I was practicing after law school. And we came back to Wisconsin in 1989, and I started practicing as a prosecutor in Racine. We have two children, 25 and 28. Our daughter is in human relations in the Waukesha area. She works for a software company. And our son is 25, just had his birthday on the 4th of July. And he's a software developer for a financial firm in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So both of them are.
So we're pretty close then with the circumstance. I haven't been married 32 years. We've only been married 26. But I have a stepdaughter that's 28, soon to be 29, a son who's 25, and then I have a daughter at 23. So we've got similar ages, and it's great to see them off and kind of on their own. And
yeah, and when we moved here to Hudson 4 years ago, it was the first time that we were empty nesters in a quarter of a century. And it was a real nice experience. It was nice to know your wife and yourself have something in common other than, arguing about the children or
right.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of started out as a honeymoon period for us again. It was very
well. Before we talk about
nice.
that experience here, because you've been 4 years as a prosecutor here in the St. Croix County DA's office, and you are the chief assistant or deputy district attorney. Let's bring us from '89 when you began as a prosecutor. So you've got more than it's about 27 years experience as a Wisconsin prosecutor. So take us through that period of time.
Well, after law school, I got a job as an assistant state's attorney in Illinois, and I worked for several counties in Illinois. And in 1989, I got an opportunity to come closer to home in Racine County. I started there as the career criminal prosecutor. It was a grant position. It was attempting to identify those individuals who were too highly involved in the system, the repeat offenders continuously.
Okay.
I was there for about a year, and at the same time I started, the state took over the district attorney's program for the lawyers, and I was made deputy district attorney after I was there a year, which meant I did a lot of the day-to-day management. I directly supervised the felony attorneys, and because of the nature of it, I ended up getting most of the serious crimes. Racine, unfortunately, has an abundance of that, but I ended up doing a lot of the more serious crimes, whether they were crimes of violence, whether they were sexual assaults against children, and those kind of things. So I was there as the deputy district attorney for 15 years, and in 2004, my best friend, who was the district attorney at that time, he retired. And I ran in 2004. I won election there, and I was reelected in 2006 and 2008. So I was.
This was in Racine County.
In Racine County.
Okay.
So I was elected 3 times as a Republican in Racine County as the district attorney.
Well, and that's saying something. I mean, I went to school at Carthage, which is very near the Racine County border in Kenosha.
Down in Kenosha.
And it's a pretty democratic area of the state, generally, but there's a difference between the out county and the city itself. So you didn't have any. How about your boss? Was he a Republican or a Democrat?
The office has been a Republican office since 1978.
Okay.
And continues that way to this time. So the Republicans have done a very good job in Racine, but the community itself, there's in the presidential election, it'll turn Democratic. but the local office holders, by and large, have been Republican for a number of years.
Okay. And in your case, then personally, I've been asking the different candidates their experience in party politics. You've been a Republican Party member how long?
I became a Republican Party member back in 1992. I've been a continuous member. When I was in Racine, I was the vice chair for a number of years, of the local county party. I've been involved in Republican politics for a long time. You know, when I first got involved in the Racine County Republican Party there, Reince Priebus, who's now the Republican National Chairperson,
right,
was on the board, just a board member like I. Robin Voss, who's now the Speaker of this Assembly, he was on the board.
Wow, it's kind of an all-star cast.
Yes, I remember working on Paul Ryan's first election campaign, having a sit-down breakfast with him at a Greek restaurant in Racine, and he was a regular visitor.
Yeah, Paul Ryan, he tends to be in the news a little bit.
Yeah, he's been, and he, of course, is Speaker of the House, and so Racine County it's a very partisan county. It's a very split county, but I've been involved in Republican politics starting there for more than 20 years now.
So you said 15 years as deputy district attorney, and I remember when they made him state employees because I was a prosecutor in Eau Claire at the time, and then this job came up and I stopped being a prosecutor. But what makes it possible for you to be a prosecutor this long? What is it about your DNA that makes you like this job so much?
I like it because I wake up every morning and I can do something for my community. And sometimes that's giving a young person an opportunity to show they've made a mistake, they're taking ownership of what they've done, and they're trying to change their life. And sometimes it's going into court and convincing a jury, and then later on a judge's sentencing, that this is a person that you're prosecuting that needs to be removed from the community for community protection. And what I truly liked about it is I never had to go home when my kids were young and explain to them that I helped somebody, a bad guy in their terms, get back out in the street. You get to wear the white hat. You get to think that every day you get to make a chance to make a difference in your community. That's very rewarding. Some of the stuff you have to deal with, whether it's the child exploitation because of child porn or child sexual assaults, or the homicides, the violence you see, whether it's death or domestic violence that doesn't result in death, is very difficult to deal with. And it can be very wearing, and there's a lot of people who they just can't take the day-to-day stuff. For me, it was always an opportunity to make a difference in the place I live. That was more than enough.
Well, and don't want to mislead people here. It's not like you've been a prosecutor constantly since that time, because you are also unique among all the candidates running for this position that you actually have experience as being a judge.
I did.
Tell our viewers about that.
I did get to sit on the bench in Racine. Governor Walker, there was an opening. Governor Walker appointed me to the bench. Unfortunately, the appointment happened in December. The election, it was at the end of December, right before Christmas, and the election was April 2nd. That was in 2011, 2012, and I ran and lost. I was appointed to the civil bench. I did a number of jury trials because there was an opening on the bench for about 6 months and things tend to pile up. So I did 4 personal injury trials as a judge with juries. I did a lot of small claims and evictions because that's in the civil calendar. But I did family law, did dissolutions of marriage, divorces, and the other arguments that come up, and made evidentiary rulings and such. It took up a lot of my time because I had spent at that point 20 plus years as a criminal lawyer on the prosecution side, and a lot of the civil stuff that was back in law school days.
Right.
So, but the state does a real good job at supporting new judges. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of materials, and you rely on the lawyers before you, and you listen to the evidence, you make credibility determinations, you go forward. But it did teach me quite a bit of things about being conscious of the scheduling needs of others, being conscious of the issues that are going on and how
and I would imagine your, 7 years as head DA in Racine. helped prepare you for some of that administrative duties as a judge.
It does. I had done, there was a long transition. When I was in Racine, I did more of the last, as the deputy, I still did a lot of the budgeting, a lot of the personnel work. But being a judge is an entirely different process than being the head of an office. In Racine, I had 17 other lawyers. I had another 20 support staff. I had roughly 40 people.
So how does that compare to St. Croix County, where you've worked now for the last 4+ years?
St. Croix County we have 6 lawyers.
Okay.
We have another, let me see, 7, 10, 14 people working as support staff, either in victim witness office or in the diversion program, or support staff in terms of office management. So it's roughly half the size. But when you're a judge, you're working on your caseload. You see a whole lot of different lawyers on a continual basis, but it's really yourself, your clerk, your reporter. Those are the people you're interacting with. And one of the things I found I missed is, you become kind of isolated as a judge. You have the other judges you interact with, they're very good normally about helping with things. But when you're in a DA's office, you become dependent on being able to have the other lawyers help you out with a research problem, especially when you're in trial, or covering for each other because someone else's, their motion lasted too long, so you need to be able to walk in and cover those motions. It's more of a cooperative effort. You're very much kind of a solo operator, solo practitioner when you're on the bench.
Well, but you know what it's like now, so as a judge, you know what it's like as a deputy assistant DA, and you know what it's like as being the head DA in a county that's twice the size of St. Croix County. So which of those, I mean, now you want to be a head DA again. What are the different aspects to the job? Kind of explain that to our viewers here about what it's like to go from being the deputy DA to the head DA.
Well, the biggest difference is that you are the final say and final responsibility for everyone. You set the tone for the office, you set the nature of the policy. And it's important that you set the right, not only image, because optics, while they're important, are really just that, optics, but the right kind of influence. You want people to care about their job. You want them to make sure they're doing the right thing. You want them to understand that what they're doing is important. It's important when you have a case to the victim, whether it's large or small. It might be the only time they're ever in court. To the defendant, and lastly to the community. And you owe an obligation to each of those persons to do the right thing. And I think the tone that's set by the elected official in the DA's office sets that. We've had an excellent district attorney for the last 27 years. Eric Johnson has been the district attorney. He's worked real hard at moving forward in terms of things like diversion, modernizing the office, getting adequate resources. There's a number of district attorneys throughout the state that are not only short lawyers, it's a huge problem. By the state's estimate, DA's office across the state is short a third of the lawyers they need to do their job in a timely and appropriate manner. But the county has been very supportive of getting an adequate staffing level for both our diversion programs, for our victim witness people, for our support staff, for the attorneys. And all those areas have to function together because it's the attorneys that get to go into court and get to make.
Speaking of going into court, do you see yourself, if elected to this position, as having more of a role in the courtroom prosecuting hands-on cases than your current boss, or would it be about the same?
I will be a person who's in the courtroom. That's where I'm most comfortable. The administrative stuff, you can do that. But in terms of the day-to-day stuff, it's important for the judges, in my belief, it's important to the staff to see that the boss can do the job. And I'm going to be there only because that's where I like to be. If no other reason from that, and I think I can best demonstrate my beliefs and my policies by being in court and having the interaction. If you separate yourself too much from that, you're going to lose that kind of contact with the courts, with the public, with the people who are coming in, whether the defendants, the defense bar, or the victims. I think it's important. So I imagine about 80% of my time is going to be spent in the courtroom, which is pretty much, or working on cases, which is pretty much where my split is now.
Okay. So you don't see that changing a whole lot. How about your management philosophy or your style? Obviously, you had an opportunity for 7 years to be exhibiting that in Racine County. You going to copy that, or are you going to be changing based on some experiences happening to you since then? Changing a little, changing a lot, or just how would you describe your management style?
Well, first of all, I believe in hiring the best persons and putting them in an opportunity to do their work in the best manner, giving them the tools that they need to do it. I don't believe in micromanaging. I believe in setting broad policies to, in terms of time and what I want to see done and what I don't want to see done. And I emphasize communication. I want my lawyers to come and talk to me when they have a problem. I want the lawyers that work with me to keep in contact with me as to what's going on in the various cases as they come on. If they have problems with the court because of scheduling, or with a defense attorney who they're taking positions, I want to know that. And so communication, I think, is the key to having a good functioning office. I make an effort. When I was in Racine, I made an effort every day to talk to every one of my persons, even for a couple of minutes, just to see what they're doing that day, what's going on in their life, to have that kind of communication so I know what they're dealing with. You can head off some problems that way. You can't always prevent it, but if you're willing to talk to them when something is falling apart or they're over their head, which unfortunately because of the state system we have a lot of inexperience in prosecutors' office across the state.
I wanted to talk about that. And this is something you don't really have a control over as a district elected official at the local level here in the county, because it's kind of state policy and set by the legislature and the governor as to what they're paying. But what are some of the recent challenges? Because like I said, I remember 26 years ago when they made them state employees, and we got this nice bump in pay from what Eau Claire County was paying to what the state paid, and then they were actually rewarding longevity and had nice step increases, and that seemed to stop. I don't know, it was about 7, 8 years ago, and it just kind of stagnated now.
It actually stopped in about 2001, and
Okay.
since 2001, under both Republican and Democratic governors and legislatures, there's been a process where a lot of state employees, not just the prosecutor's office, but state employees generally, their ability to gain an income has been stymied. There's people who have been working since 2001. Starting salary is $48,000. Not a bad starting salary. They're at $60,000 with $125,000 in law school debt. That has forced the assistant DAs to become younger and younger.
You can't pull somebody who's been in practice 10, 15 years and give them and start them at a advanced salary level?
There is a process called hiring above minimum. For example, when I was hired here, I was able to, Rick Johnson was able to do that for me. Generally, it's not approved, and it has caused the average amount of experience to go down continuously. If you eliminate myself and Rick, the most experience as a prosecutor is 4 years in our office. Wow. We have a person who's a month and a half away from being sworn into the bar, someone who's 8 months away.
And that all started about 2001, because I remember towards the end of the 90s, after I had been out of prosecuting for 9, 10 years, my cohorts in the old office were still there, and they were still advancing, and they had average experience of 15, 20 years.
And that was far more typical. So you're seeing people going to the U.S. Attorney's Office, to the Attorney General's office here, to Minnesota prosecutors' offices, because they're able to gain it. And everyone wants to be paid what they think they're worth.
Why is experience so crucial to being a prosecutor, particularly being the head DA?
The experience is crucial because you have to have a variety of views. You have to know what happens in trials. Trials always have something that you don't expect. It doesn't mean that you haven't seen it before, but you have to be prepared and willing to answer. It's experience that you don't want to be the first time the surgeon is opening up and looking at your heart, and all he's seen is a book and a cadaver. You would actually like someone who's done the process before, done the surgery. Well, it's the same with lawyers. There's very talented trial lawyers, but there are things you need to do, and everybody needs to work on how do you appeal to a jury? How do you present your case? How do you organize your case, and depending on the facts, to get the best view by the jury? How do you break down the law, which can be complex and confusing to judges, lawyers, to a group of individuals who really come in when they're sitting in a trial and not know. So it's, there's one thing
So
about
being
passing the bar.
being one of the most experienced assistants here in St. Croix County over the last 4 years, so what type of cases have you handled?
I've handled, currently I have the double homicide out of New Richmond that happened last fall. I've handled child sexual assaults. I handled there was a multiple victim child sexual assault from someone from North Hudson. That was my prosecution. The arson at the St. Croix Central Elementary School that happened a couple of years ago, that I've done. The shooting that happened in the parking lot on a Sunday morning in 2013, when some Somalian gang members started shooting at another group of Somalian gang members. That was my prosecution. I've done all those matters successfully, and I've been able to get good results, and good results for the community, I think.
Okay, so I guess you probably have answered that. I mean, as far as why do you want, well, why St. Croix County as opposed to one of the other counties that you could have gone to from Racine?
Well, I came to St. Croix County, and it was actually I came up here on the day of the Schaffhausen homicide. And I met Rick. It was kind of a busy day in the office. They were trying to prepare for the first appearances and such. But I liked the fact that it was a smaller community. I liked the fact that there was a real good support team. And there was a good group of lawyers there, a number of them who had some experience at the time. And I liked the community. We spent our first evening walking up and down the river on the St. Croix and Hudson. It's a beautiful riverfront. Right. We're going to go there tonight and listen to some music if the storms hold off tonight. But the community is alive. Hudson has a very vibrant downtown compared to a lot of places that it's not there. It has a good mixture of rural and small towns. It's near enough to the cities. It has a lot of good features. And it's a community that's looking forward, quite frankly. The Milwaukee area, the Racine area, kind of wants it to be 1972 again. And that was a great year. That was a really good year in my life. But quite frankly, people in Hudson, people in New Richmond, people in River Falls and Glenwood City, they all are looking, and they think that their lives in a couple of years is going to be better. It's going to be better for their children. That's a different outlook, and that is important on a community's perspective.
What would the public see as biggest change from maybe how the office is currently run and handled if you were elected?
I don't know if there's going to be a huge, enormous change. There's going to be a new lawyer, in addition to myself, and that depends. What we do on a day-to-day basis depends on what comes in. It's not like criminals call me up and schedule and say, hey, I'm going to do an armed robbery at the bank this week, catch me if you can. So what happens, it depends on where the law enforcement is, what happens at that time. I hope to continue an emphasis on looking at who can be diverted, who can be taken out of the system, who can be given an opportunity to help themselves before they get into further problems. We have a huge meth problem in this community. We have a heroin use that, fortunately, we haven't had recent deaths, but several years ago, that was an enormous problem with our young people. We're going to have to do more emphasis on diversion. We're going to have to do more emphasis on early treatment. And that's something that the county can't do itself. That's a national problem, that's a state problem, that's a local problem. And we're going to see more focus on those things.
So relying on maybe some resources outside the justice system per se.
I think you're going to have to. And it's a community problem. I mean, we have, the legislature can give us laws, can give us some tools, and we got to make the best use of those tools that we can. But it's still ongoing problems, and it's a problem people have to be made aware of. When I started as a prosecutor, there were counties, I won't name them, but there were places where if you found a drunk driver and he was a local, the officer gave him a ride home. They didn't charge him. That was not unusual 30 years ago. Nowadays, if an officer does that, they lose their job. There's been a big view in how we view that and how we view drunk driving. There's been a huge switch in how we treat domestic violence in this country. And we have to continue that because it's a serious problem. And what we need to recognize is domestic violence is generational. Young men who see their fathers abusing their mothers think that's how relationship goes. Young girls who see their mothers being abused by mom's boyfriend or husband think that that's acceptable. They move into those relationships by themselves and they don't know the difference. We have to make the same kind of change that our perception of how we view drunk driving, and we need to move that in our domestic abuse. We need to go back and start talking to kids about opiate and pill use and how it can destroy their lives. Some of that resources need to be done on the enforcement side. A lot of it needs to be done on the treatment side, and it's going to take a combination. It's going to take a lot of people to do a lot of work in some fields that they're not really used to.
So would you say in your time here in St. Croix County that you've seen the diversion program work and be able to save taxpayers' resources that people would otherwise maybe get thrown in the system and put on probation?
Yes, and there's a number of people, particularly young people, but sometimes this person's situational. A relationship's breaking up and they've acted out, or they're abusing alcohol. And alcohol is still, in this country and in this area, the #1 abused drug. In this community, it's probably alcohol, marijuana, meth, and then heroin. But we have to work on all those things, and we have to do that. There has to be resources. Diversion's grown tremendously. We have 200 persons that are in diversion. Not all of them succeed. A lot of them get their diversions revoked. But we give them the opportunity and try to keep them out of, one, the criminal justice system and the probation system, and not overload those resources because they have the ability, for whatever reason, through insurance, through family resources, to get the help they need on their own and keep them out of the system.
Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, I see that our time is up. I want to thank you for coming in, and remember, it's Nieskes, and spell your last name for the audience.
Nieskes, and they can go to my website, go to the Facebook page that my wife is normally watching over.
Do you know what the URL or the address is for that?
Nieskes for DA.
Okay, and it's all spelled out?
I believe it's a 4. Is it? No, it is all spelled out.
All spelled out, okay.
As I check my technology person.
All right, very good. And well, anyway, again, good luck. And if things go right, then you'll have another 90-day campaign following the August 9th primary.
I hope to see you back then.
All right,
Take
very
care.
good. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jerry.
And thank you for watching another segment of Western Wisconsin Journal.